Welcome to this instant reaction case study about a CV-22 Osprey save at Albuquerque. For the record, I'm filming this on January 19th of 2021. I only found out about this morning. I don't know when it occurred. It probably occurred a couple of months ago, perhaps as much as a year or so ago. And I'm going to keep this one real short. So this is the standard slide I have with some standard caveats. But basically, I have pretty much one piece of publicly available information about this, and that's enough for me to discuss this. I'm going to argue that the controller did a fantastic job, and I want to highlight specifically what I think was one of the most fantastic parts about it, along with an embarrassing story about myself. All right, so the basic situation is this. I have one data source. This is an article from AbWeb. I'm just going to go to it. I've already got it queued up. So I saw this when I was on AbWeb this morning doing some research about Cirrus parachutes and things like that. But anyway, saw this headline, said civilian controller spot snag prevents Osprey crash, corrected. For the record, the correction had to do with the earlier version identifying the controller as an Air Force controller. Instead, she's a civilian FAA controller at the shared facility at Kirtland Air Force Base, also known as Sunport International Airport in Albuquerque. So let's just go ahead and kind of read parts of this. It says an FAA controller has been recognized for preventing the crash of an Osprey by noticing a maintenance snag from the tower. The student crew was taking off on a challenging mission when Wendy Smith, who's been watching Ospreys take off and land for 12 years, spotted something as the aircraft climbed out and got on the radio. Now, all I have for my publicly available information is this dry transcript. I don't know what her tone of voice was, but she said something to the effect apparently of, "Hey, Dusty 7-3, your right prop rotor looks weird." So the crew checked the rotor, noticed that one blade was misaligned, put the aircraft down, so they fired up a different Osprey and went off on their mission. On the ground, maintenance crews discovered the pitch-aligned bearing in the rotor hub was failing and would likely have come apart during the mission with the loss of the crew. That was likely, along with the $90 million aircraft. Quote, "It requires experience to know that something's wrong. She's been up there for 12 years. She's probably one of the few people here with the experience to recognize that something's not quite right," said the Special Operations Squadron commander, and she received a commemorative coin along with this short instant reaction case study video. So good job, Wendy. But let's just talk about this when controller spots something. Again, you know, most of you are going to be pretty much on board with this. It takes a trained eye to kind of recognize this stuff. Fantastic job. This is the little kind of save where you save an entire aircraft and crew and so on, and it may or may not get noticed. So it's obviously been noticed. I'm happy to notice it a little more. What I'd like to do, just by way of very brief discussion about this, is I'll just kind of start with the takeaways, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail here. So first of all, if you see something that doesn't quite seem right, I think the best way to do it is to factually describe to the pilots what you see. Now, there will be a judgment call about the timing. If they're in a critical phase of flight, you might want to wait a little bit. So, for example, not on an Osprey, but for a normal aircraft, let's say, that's rolling down the runway, a high-speed abort it can be quite risky. So, there's a judgment call. There's no single way to teach this, but there might be times when you defer for something like on the order of 10 or 20 seconds or so. Other times, just factually describe. There's also going to be a judgment call about the voice quality that you use. Don't just automatically sound panicked, and however you're going to do that with your voice inflection, with your speech rate, with your volume and so on like that. But something of, generally speaking, an even keel, just factual description of what's going on, as long as the timing is not bad, is good. But again, keep in mind, sometimes you may see something and you're not sure if it's a problem or not. So with that in mind, if you'll indulge me in a brief personal story where I'm going to talk about something about spoilers open on takeoff. So my aviation start came with gliders. And with gliders, my aviation start basically as a young teenager, I was working at a glider school as what's known as a wing runner. And so among other things, gliders normally just have the one main wheel. And so normally, you don't have to do this in many cases, but normally you have somebody who's a wing runner. That's the person who hooks the tow rope up. And then they go out and stand by the wingtip, whichever wing is low to the ground typically. It doesn't have to be. When the glider pilot is ready, the glider pilot normally gives a thumbs up to the wing runner. The wing runner grabs the wing and just holds the wings essentially level. Sometimes you hold one wing a little high or a little low, depending on a possible crosswind. And then as the glider starts the takeoff roll, being pulled behind the tow plane or pulled by a winch or something like that, the wing runner literally holds the wingtip and runs along with the glider for a little bit so that the glider has a little bit of air airspeed, some aileron control. The wing runner lets go of the wing, and that way the glider pilot can use the aileron to keep the wings level as they do the takeoff. And so it's not catastrophic if a wingtip touches the ground in a glider during these takeoff rolls. In fact, you could do it with the wingtip dragging the ground the whole time. There's just a little extra wear and tear in the gliders and a little extra thing to be aware of. But as a wing runner, one of the things I absolutely did as a safety check is I would assess when I got that thumbs up signal whether the spoilers were open on the glider. Now, to be clear, it's up to the pilot to make sure that the spoilers are closed and locked on a glider. And from the wing runner's perspective, you can only see if they're closed. You can't tell if they're locked. But if for some reason some glider pilot gave you a thumbs up with the spoilers open, they've made a huge mistake that can be catastrophic, and then you would convey to them, it's pretty easy to do it basically by shouting some expletives at how stupid they are about the fact that you're getting the thumbs up signal with the spoilers open. So that just is kind of part of my background. If you'd actually like to see what this looks like a little bit, we're going to click on this very short YouTube video for a second. And let me just pause for a second and give you the backstory. I believe this is in the UK. I'm not absolutely certain. I don't know exactly what model of glider this is. And you can see what looks like a Piper Pawnee or something like that tow plane out here. Anyway, this blue handle over here on the left is the spoiler or the air brake handle. So it's apparently closed in that forward position. It doesn't appear to me quite that it looks locked. If it's locked, it should be maybe rotated a little bit farther to the left. But again, I'm not sure what glider model this is. I can't vouch for it. Whether it's locked or not, as the glider is sort of bouncing along on the grass, the vibrations are going to open that during the takeoff roll, and that is going to cause the problem. So you'll get some sense of how bad that can be. For what it's worth, in this particular accident, my understanding is that the pilot survived with maybe some minor back problems and so on. But what you're going to see is the takeoff will start normally. Those will bounce open. You don't know what a normal takeoff looks like, but to the trained eye, this is going to be a much longer takeoff roll than normal. The glider pilot, you'll start to sense from his voice during this that he senses that something is wrong. He can't quite put his finger on it. He never notices that these have popped open. If he had, just close them, and that's one way to solve it. The other is, and preferably, if he knows that something is going on and can't quite put his finger on it, if there's runway available, he should use his left hand, which is on the release knob here. You can't really quite tell that, but he should be releasing the tow rope and then just aborting the takeoff. He doesn't do that. They do take off. There are trees down at the far end. It is arguable whether the tow pilot was going to end up in the trees, and let's just say that the tow pilot has the right to survive and live. And so normally tow rope releases are done from the glider end, but the tow pilot in an emergency certainly has the right to release the tow rope from their end. I'm not absolutely certain, but I believe the tow plane is going to release the tow rope, and that's when you'll see that whoever put this video together is going to put together a little graphic just saying tow rope disconnects. As soon as that happens, you'll hear a little bit of a thunk. The glider pilot will also release the rope on his end. Having said that, assuming for my purposes the tow pilot is the one who releases the tow rope, I think that the tow pilot did have a conscience and released it, okay, in order to save his or her own life, but also in a position where the reasonable expectation was that the glider was going to be able to make it into a suitable field just off the end of the airport. However, because, and really unknown to the tow plane as well, the spoilers were open, the glider does not quite make it to the field. So let's watch the whole thing.
Shit! Oh my god!
Okay, so part of my own personal background was if I was watching a glider take off and the spoilers maybe had popped open during the takeoff roll, I would just have a bad feeling about how it was going to end up. Who knows if the glider pilot would catch it or would abort soon enough, but I also was aware that it could be bad. With that in mind, a little bit later, and this is certainly before I became hired as an air traffic controller, I went to work for a while at an FBO at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, known as Cutter Aviation down on the south side. And probably day one, might have been day two of me working there. I was out on the ramp there at Cutter. That puts me ballpark half mile from what was then the only south side runway. It's now 7 left. And I watched an America West Dash 8 taxi out, take the runway for takeoff, and I saw the spoilers open. And again, from a half mile away, I saw the spoilers open on this Dash 8, and I had that, oh my God type feeling. Oh shit, I'm about to watch this airplane take off and crash. And it literally crossed my mind like, uh-oh, I better make sure I'm watching this accurately, because when this plane goes down, the NTSB is going to want accurate witnesses rather than a bunch of yahoos. And so in my mind, I was half thinking, uh-oh, I'm going to be a witness. And I half thought that maybe I have time to like run over to one of the airplanes parked on the ramp, open the door, throw on the master switch, get the radio on the tower frequency, and just key the mic and say something like, Dash 8, your spoilers are open, or something like that. Well, before I had any chance of even moving, they were rolling for takeoff. The spoilers went down and it took off perfectly normal. Now, many of you will know, if you've seen Dash 8s take off, that that's the way Dash 8s behave. It's a particular design feature of the Dash 8 that I just didn't know about on day one working there at Cutter. We're going to watch a 10-second snippet of a normal Dash 8 takeoff so you can see what those spoilers look like. We'll assume they took off just fine, right? Okay, so the way the Dash 8's set up, you actually basically have it armed so that those spoilers come up. It has to do with the short field capabilities of the Dash 8. As soon as you put power on the airplane at the start of the takeoff roll, the spoilers go down automatically. If there's an engine failure and you're boarding on the runway, the reason for that is that the way the spoilers come up and help in the short takeoff situation. So there's always going to be a judgment call, and I suppose it's possible you're going to be an idiot like me and get it wrong. Good thing that day I didn't really have access to a radio, but as a controller, there's no way to teach all this stuff because it's going to be a judgment call. But if you happen to see something that you think is problematic, and if you decide that you need to say something, again, just pay attention to the timing, pay attention to the voice quality, factually describe what you see. And for what it's worth, I'll just finish on this. The only relevant video that I've put up on the Indy Center In-Flight Emergencies project, and likely the only video that I have that I will put up that's relevant to this, is a video I call Something New, Preventing and or Stopping Stupid Pilot Tricks. Now, to be clear, that video refers to a couple of specific situations. One is with a pilot who's trying to taxi out, maybe who's drunk, and also for a pilot who's taking off and or they've managed to get airborne and the airplane is overloaded and behind the aft CG limits as far as the weight and balance goes. But in principle, if you see something else that's wrong with the airplane, spoilers open, something with the door, something else like a panel has come open or something, again, it's just a judgment call on the timing and the voice quality, but the best option is probably just factually describe what you see. And so for what it's worth, let me come out of this, let me go back to this. Hey Dusty73, your right prop rotor looks weird. If you see something, say something, just describe it factually. Thank you and congratulations, Wendy. We'll try to make sure you get more than just a commemorative coin. Great job.